Now let's get to meet our guests and begin the discussion this morning. So this morning we are joined in the studio by Osei Bonsu Amwa. Many of you know him as Obi Amwa. He is MP, Ekwapem South, and Deputy Minister, Local Government and Rural Development. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Samson, for having me here.
Also here in the studio is Sami Jamfi, who's a National Communications Officer, National Democratic Congress. He's a lawyer. Thanks for joining us.
Grateful to be here.
Right. Now, we will have joining us via Zoom Professor Kwesi Ening, who is Director, Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research, Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. If Prof. Kwesi Ening is on with us, say hi to us. Okay, so he's not ready yet. Once he joins us, we'll introduce him to you. And as you know, we are discussing the issue of the secessionist. We will later, once we begin the discussion with the exhibition process, then we will have Dr. Sribo Kweku, who is Director of Electoral Services, Electoral Commission, also join us. Thank you very much. Now, let's get to begin with our discussion for this morning. But before that, I ought to let you know that this show is brought to you by the kind sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go, Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa, Consolidated Bank Ghana, we stand with you. Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. We lead, we build home for you. Star Assurance, your solid partner, and Rehoboth Properties. So, as you are aware, yesterday we woke up to very disturbing news of a group of people who apparently have been known by all of us and by the security apparatus for a long time. In fact, some of them have been arrested, released, among other things, over a certain period. And suddenly yesterday, they did, can we say the unthinkable? Blocked roads, caused traffic, entered police stations, seized police stations, and took away arms and ammunition, we are told, and caused vandalism. In fact, in the process of the security being on their tail, we understand that a life was lost. So, Dr. Kwesi Ening is back with us. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Kwesi Ening. Hello, Professor Kwesi Ening.
Yes.
Great. Very good to have you. Very good to have you.
Can you hear me? Yes, thank you.
Yes, I can hear you. All right. So the very first, and I think most critical questioning, very basic, that many people have asked is this not a representation of a classical example of intelligence failure, very monumental, so to speak, on the part of our intelligence agencies, knowing that this group, which is in about 3 different phases, we are told, has existed for so long and has planned to do some of these things for a long time? Hello, Professor Ening.
Yes. Question is mine. I think the network is quite unstable, but I'll try to respond of what I heard from your question as to whether on the part of the intelligence security agencies. There is no doubt at all.
Okay, so I think we clearly need to work that be very clear about what happened. But take a view at, look at some of these footages that came from these, disturbances. Just watch. So those of you who have the benefit of the television pictures, they put tires in the middle of the road, bent them, and we see the fire going up, and there are attempts to put the fire out. And you have this group, a militia of sorts, chanting in the midst of what they are doing. We'll bring you pictures also of what they have done to, we're told, 2 police stations. And you see the vandalism that occurred. Yes, that's a police station. You see the vandalism that occurred. The entire police station ransacked. And as we understand, they appear to have managed to take away, some weapons. The security agencies, as in the police and the military, yesterday issued a statement after they were done with their operations. So I'll read their statement as you watch the footage of the vandalism that went on. They said that the Ghana Armed Forces and the Ghana Police Service jointly make reference to the activities of Homeland Study Group Foundation, HSGF, which occurred at dawn of Friday, 25th September 2020, in the general area of Jopong, Sogakope, Avehime, Mepe, and Akuse, and to assure the general public that the situation has since been brought under control. It is confirmed that at about 2 a.m. on the stated dates, elements of the group attacked the Aveime and Mepe police stations. So those are the 2 police stations that were attacked, Aveime and Mepe police stations, and further mounted roadblocks on the Japong Accra and Sogakope Accra main roads, thereby disrupting the daily routine of the citizenry. In response to these unlawful acts, a joint military police team, in conjunction with other security agencies, deployed to the affected areas and succeeded in apprehending 31 members of the group. These arrested persons have since been brought to Accra for interrogation. Fire exchanges between the group and the security agencies led to the death of 1 member of the group and injury to 3 others. The police commander at Aveime was also wounded and has been evacuated to the police hospital. The wounded group members have also been evacuated to the Ho Teaching Hospital, and you'll see that shortly on our screens, the evacuation for these people. All the roadblocks have also been cleared, and the security agencies have taken control. They have taken control. We'll ask why they are now taking control when this appears to have been something they ought to have known all this while. Taking control of the highways and strategic installations within the region. It is hereby stated that an earlier preemptive operation on Thursday, 24th September 2020, foiled a plan by the group to burn the whole central market and other key installations. So a day before, they actually had intelligence that they intended to burn the whole central market. We wish to reassure the general public that the security and intelligence agencies are in firm control, underline, of the situation and remain undaunted in their resolve at preserving and protecting the sanctity of the entire territory of our dear country. In the meantime, the general public, so I think what you're about to see now is the evacuation process that happened. In the meantime, the general public is entreated to remain calm and to volunteer any relevant information on the activities of the group for necessary action. And this was signed by Eric Agri Kwashi, Colonel, Director, Public Relations, the Ghana Armed Forces, and Sheila Kessie Abeye Bachman, Mrs., Superintendent of Police, Director, Public Affairs, Ghana Police Service. So that's the evacuation, the pictures that you are seeing now as they get ready to evacuate the wounded and evacuate the dead and the wounded. There was the police commander who was wounded and has been brought to Accra, and then the members of the group who got wounded who were also taken to Ho. All right, so let's get to Professor Kwesi Ening. Prof, I hope that our lines are clear now.
Yes, hello.
Yes, Professor Ening.
Yes.
Okay, so the question isn't this clear enough that our security has failed us?
Well, it certainly does raise some very disturbing questions. And these are disturbing questions that I think should not be swept under the carpet. And let me go a couple of steps back. The video plus the statement that you have alluded to. There is a police communications statement dated 3rd of September. I think the time on it is 14:05. So as you correctly say, there was enough intelligence almost 36 hours prior to yesterday's activity. So they are about how the intelligence was used, understood when the flash came. Now, use the word success for what took place yesterday in terms of the action by the rebel group. And I'm using this word rebel because one or two of the statements, official statements that have been issued, uses that word rebel. I think it was the police statement. What happened yesterday is the single most successful first-time military attack by a secessionist group, both in the Sahel-Sahara and in West Africa. And that is the context within which we should examine the import taking place. If one looks at the videos that you have shown and the names of the towns that you have mentioned, the sheer geographical expanse of where the actions took place, the time that it took them to block roads, sing patriotic songs, dance round, and also talk to people. The choice of the two police stations, the successes in overrunning them, tying them up, destroying state property, and seizing, shows or tells a story of careful planning, masterful execution, and a clear signal to the state particular group has gone beyond talking. Important to recognize that there are now two flags and possibly more than 2 or 3 groups all using a secessionist language. So let me speak a little bit about the sheer immense of the collective failure to prevent what happened yesterday.
Now, Prof.
Secessionist groups decide to engage a state, they are very
hello, Prof. I think we have a problem with his Zoom connection. Perhaps maybe we should just do a direct phone conversation. If we can just reach him by phone directly, that may be better, because he's saying some very important things with his expertise and knowledge of the situation. And Professor Kwesi Ening, as you know, is no stranger to this subject, has consulted and advised extensively, including to the UN, on these matters, and in Ghana has been quick to go to. Now, let's listen to this, and I'll watch and listen to this, and I'll use that to ask Prof a further question before I come to ask him whether or not we should discount and completely ignore the claims that this may not be a security or intelligence failure, but perhaps, just perhaps, no matter how propagandist it may sound, that this may have been a deliberate thing put out there, and so it's not a security failure or intelligence failure. On the 24th of August, this group was cited somewhere, one of their leaders, so to call, or members, evangelizing residents about the need or the importance of what they have been seeking to do. Let's listen to this one and then continue with Professor Kwesi Ening.
Everybody, I will bless you in the name of our Father, the Father of the land, Western Togoland. Today, the 24th day of August 2020, is a special day in the history of Western Togoland. Look, friends of mine and beloveds of Western Togoland, we are suffering for too much, and it is too much for us. We are serving Ghana for many years. We are not gaining anything. Ghana subo at the red didi. Yes, you kuzio. Yes, you no onu papana to go. Yes, you apatona. Aso de bitemia. Yeah, yeah. Aso de bitemia. Yeah, yeah. We are ready to go home. All the chuba. Yeah, Ghana to. Yeah, Lorechi. We are ready. We are ready. All the tutami. All the nyan of Yola. Nyan of Yola Gama. Lobi Ada. Amaro Teto. Amaro Fofu. All the Kahoma. This is the time for our liberation to take place now. We want Western Togoland to be free. We want to turn an Akufo Addo. The Volta Regional Minister Lecha, Ashpa Lecha Yao. Release Western Togoland. Release him. Release them. Release them. This is the time. This is the time. This is the time. This is the time for Western Togoland. For Western Togoland to be free. Western Togoland.
Right. So, Professor Ening, this is as far back as the 24th of August. What does that say?
Well, it points to, it actually even creates a much more disturbing picture of the intelligence failures that we are talking about. Because this was not a hidden meeting. I mean, we need to know which town this meeting took place in. Because I suspect part of the rebuttal might be that this might not even have taken place in Ghana. So it would be useful to be able to identify that town. But if it did happen in Ghana, and it was such a public meeting, and it was not reported so that, preventive action could be taken a month later, then the monumental failure of intelligence is even much more disturbing. But if you permit me for a couple of seconds to go back to the point I was making about the symbolism in attacking institutions of the state, and particularly the choice of a police station.
And if you may go back a bit more and summarize your first substantive points you made in isolating this as the first in West Africa.
Okay, let me repeat that. This is the most successful first attack by a secessionist group against a sovereign state in West Africa and in the Sahel-Sahara. It is the most successful first secessionist attack because we need to look at the geographical expanse of the attack. Okay, from Japan to Sogakope to all the towns that you mentioned. Now, these are not small towns. So where were the police, national security, the BNI? Okay, so that is one, the sheer geographical expanse. The second is the coordinated nature of those attacks. They all took place within a certain time frame, and the failure of the state is that if you see that trucks were brought in to dump red earth on the roads to block them, people sang patriotic songs, they set fire, they danced, all without a response from the state. The final symbolism around the success relates to the police station. Two police stations representing the state overran, okay, and totally defeated. Now, the 10 AK-47s that were stolen is very symbolic, okay? Now, we don't actually know if they took only 10 AK-47. We know that the National Commission for Small Arms has marked all small arms weapons in the Volta region. So we need to do an audit. But you see, the state's response to what happened yesterday is very incoherent so far. You see, because if we are serious, we need to say, look, yes, 10 guns, what were the numbers that had been stenciled on them and all those things. So the weak response, the attempt to cover tracks by saying, oh, no, this was a failure. This was not a failure at all. The significance of what has taken place, the way it will be interpreted by those across the borders. Let's not forget, when it started in Burkina Faso, it was very small. It's now taking over 85% of the country. La Côte d'Ivoire is going through a very dangerous election next month. Togo's post-election is still very unstable. So what has happened needs to be looked at very carefully, very methodically, and that no knee-jerk reaction. By showing them on television or the videos that are going around when the 31 people were brought to Accra, the Air Force Base, does not help our case. I think you mentioned close to about 5 or 6 towns where these attacks took place. It was not 31 people who did it. So we're only looking at the tip of a mega problem. And it's important that in looking or in analyzing what has taken place, that we look at how, or the historicity of this. This has germinated close to over 50 years. Okay. As a unitary state, we have been dismissive in listening to any position that undermines that unitary state. But when groups who feel excluded, because I haven't done a discourse analysis of what the tape that you played, but if I heard the young man well, he said, we are ready to go home.
Yes.
And the question is, go home to where? Okay.
He said that the people in the Volta region are not recognized, they are discriminated against. He mentions that even if you go to the workplace, all sorts of things and developments, they are lagging behind, and therefore they don't feel that they have been treated well, so they are ready to go home.
Yeah. So one of the aspects that we don't normally look at when we have these conversations is the emotional aspect of conflict. Okay, and I was struck by the statement about we are ready to go home and the catalog of offenses that makes them feel excluded. Okay, so the narrative or the responses coming from the state now about the need for a hard response. And I've seen some videos of combat troops with sniffer dogs. What are you going to sniff now? And are they going to come back to those same towns? No. Okay, so the public demonstration of preparedness by the state and its agents cannot cover the immensity and the seriousness.
We are told that there are actually three separate groups. Looks like splinter, but they are pursuing the same agenda, so to speak. How do we interpret that also? And if you, like you mentioned, this is the tip of a mega problem, and only 31 persons have been picked up.
No, good question. Thank you. These are three groups, and they haven't splintered. They are three groups that are competing for the sympathy of their potential supporters. So we've seen two different flags. Okay? What will happen post yesterday is that the success of their actions will bring them hopefully together, in which there will be, based on my studies of such movements, there will be a wing that leads the negotiations and the conversations, and then there will be a wing willing and prepared to use violence.
Okay.
The 31 people who were shown on television and the woman who was a member, by sending out a signal that, one person was dead, when groups spill blood, that blood acts as a cohesive bond, because they now all realize that they may not survive.
So this is very serious.
This is serious business. And it's been going on for quite a long time.
I'm going to come back to you on the question, because you talk about negotiations, which means that is an expectation you have. Is that to say that you expect that at a certain point in time, is it the state that you expect that will sit down with them and negotiate instead of treating them as pure criminals? But before that, I asked you earlier, for example, you said they set fire, or you simply said the things we already know. They set fire, they danced, they attacked and overran 2 police stations, they took away 10 AK-47, rifles, and most important, you say there was no response at all, or the response, which was belated, was weak. This has given credence to the questions that is being asked. Is this really a case of intelligence failure, or this is a ruse? This is actually, something that has been set up for whatever purposes?
I have read people's assessments of what has happened as a possible ruse. Look, if it were to be a ruse, then the short to medium to long-term impact of this ruse, were it to be known, will be much more dangerous than the demand for secessionism.
So they start doing things from 2 a.m. and during the day, it takes us a greater part of the day to successfully round up 31 of them. What sort of security is this? What sort of intelligence is that?
Well, let me play back your own words as a means of answering your question. A couple of weeks ago, I made a similar interview with one of your colleagues, I think Evans Mensah, and I made a strong point that the invincibility around our security agencies, that invincibility is broken. First, relates to over the past decade that our military and intelligence services have been used for actions internally, internal operations that were routinely ought not to have been their remit. So we saw the case in Kaswa about 5-6 years ago. We've seen the bold confrontations of ordinary people resisting the presence of armed security forces during the recently ended voter registration exercise. And we've seen the manner in which, in the Ewutu area, I think, there was this land case a couple of weeks ago where 2 soldiers were arrested, the rest ran away, battered and pleading for their lives, and telling people the order came from the very top, so please don't kill us. And the subsequent excessive response in flying people or people being arrested and flown to Accra. The concerns about the response is that though the intelligence might have been available, the decision making was horribly slow.
So they say, the police and military say that they had intelligence and had actually foiled an attempt, an arson attempt on the whole central market. And yet the situation could be this lax for them to operate the next day from 2 a.m. until in the morning and set fire on the roads, burn tires, and be seen in, as it were, uniform, so to speak. And all that period, you say, very delayed, and even when the response comes, you say, very weak.
Well, let me give 2 points to buttress the argument I'm making about weak response. I guess you've seen the police communication about the possibility of such an attack. Now, if you see the police response, you would notice that the date on that police communication is the 23rd of September, if you can pull it up so that your viewers can see it. I think that response says 23rd, 1455/09/2020. So that the missive or the wireless message went out around 14:55 on the 23rd. What it means is that the attacks took place almost 36 clear hours after the communication had gone out. Okay, so it raises further questions, and I do understand the Roos argument because the gaps and the failures are way too glaring. But the Roos is also a frightening thing to consider. So, did the police not take the intelligence seriously? Okay, now, if they did not, then it raises a lot of concerns and some sanctions must be done.
All right. Proceeding.
My final point.
Yeah, okay.
Now, there's been a statement signed by the communications team of both the police service and I think the Ghana Armed Forces.
Yes, I read that out.
Asking for the public to provide information.
That's right.
But there's no hotline. One would have thought
the police. I think the usual numbers are on the letterhead.
Yes, but that's not good enough.
They have the WhatsApp line. They have the emergency line, and they have their.
Like this? You want a WhatsApp line?
Oh,
WhatsApp line does not work.
They have advertised their website, their emails, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of those things on there.
Yes, but it doesn't show seriousness enough. When a crisis like this happens, and once more for me, this is reflective of the failure and the weak response. Okay,
Professor Enning, I'm going to plead with you to indulge us. I will return to why you have an expectation of some negotiation of sort, rather than a clear case of treating those arrested, taking that this is a very genuine and serious situation, as you say, not being treated as the so-called criminals as they would be. But let's first gauge the reactions of the politicians. Sami Gyamfi.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's something. Thank you very much. We in the NDC are very worried and disturbed by the armed invasion of parts of the Volta region by these alleged secessionists. Ghana is a peaceful, sovereign republic, and therefore there must not be any space or tolerance for secessionist movements. Such movements, such persons, for me, are criminals and must be treated as such. And so, as a party, we condemn in no certain terms this armed, violent invasion of parts of the Volta region. We think that it is a clear, monumental failure on the part of President Akufo-Addo, his government, and our security agencies to protect the people of the Volta region, particularly the areas where this invasion occurred. Because you see something, we have all voted for a government and we have entrusted to them the responsibility of protecting all of us, the responsibility of protecting the state and protecting the territorial integrity of Ghana is that of the president and his appointees, particularly his regional minister and the regional security council, RECSEC, in the Volta region. They have failed the nation by allowing this brazen display of bravado by these criminals, leading to the loss of life, police officer, I'm told the divisional commander, sustaining injuries, destruction of public property, assault of policemen in uniform, and so on and so forth. You see, the reason why we are so disappointed in the Akufo-Addo government relative to this incident, something, is because this did not start today. They started long ago. We've seen the signs. The members of these secessionist groups are known. The over 90-year-old Papavi, who is the leader of the Western Togoland, whatever, is known. Their members live in the Volta region. They live in the communities in the Volta region. They are known by their neighbors. They are known by our state security agencies. They operate in the open, like you've shown, today. They operate, hold meetings, and their public advocacy in the open. And so the reason why the activities have been thriving, the activities are fast festering and spiraling beyond our control, is because the Akufo-Addo government has been pampering these criminals. The approach so far has been very lukewarm and lackluster, very nonchalant. It's like they don't care, they are not perturbed about what is happening. Well, in this country, during the voter registration exercise which was conducted between June and August this year, and when it suited their political, agenda, we saw the kind of military deployment they did. Military men they deployed to the Volta region under the guise of the COVID-19 fight. Now, since these secessionist, activities have been going on in the Volta region, we have not seen government display the same level of seriousness in the deployment of the military and other security agencies to fish these criminals out and deal with them drastically in accordance with law. So they are being pampered, they are being aided. And that is why the activities are festering and threatening the stability of the Volta region. And that for us is very, very appalling and disappointing. You see, Samson, some of the questions you have asked here today are very revealing. And I think we need to pay attention to the questions you have asked here. How can a group of thugs armed to the teeth in their hundreds take siege of communities? It started from Mepe, take control of a police station after they overpowered armed policemen on duty, beat the policemen up, strip them naked to their boxer shorts, break the cells there, and, free suspects who were in legal custody, lock the policemen, break into their armory, seize sophisticated weapons, move from Mepe to support their colleagues at Aveime, overpower the policemen there, then they move to the district assembly of North Tonk, ransack the place, attack people. They move into the streets and with heaps of sand and the burning of ties block major roads like the Accra Whole Road, Accra Flower Road, and all that. And they spent hours. This is not something which happened within minutes. Hours from 2 a.m. till daybreak. In fact, they mounted these roadblocks, sang these war songs in broad daylight. And yet we did not see any efficient, any robust response from our state security agencies. I mean, how can anybody explain this? So for me, this is not a matter of intelligence failure. We are dealing with a situation which is more complex than some of us think. We are dealing with a situation which potentially has the involvement of state actors. The governmental complicity in this matter, for me, is so glaring. And that is why we must have an independent investigations into this matter and find out what happened if, according to the Volta Regional Minister, Samson, they had intelligence. They knew that these people were going to block roads. I listened to his interview on Joy FM yesterday. What did they do with that intelligence?
The police say a day before they were planning arson on the whole central market.
That is what they claim. And they say that, they also knew that they were going to block roads and all that, but they didn't know where exactly. You're talking about Volta region? I mean, You have intelligence that people are planning to destabilize the region. They are planning to attack security installations. What deployments of our men in uniform that government, do to check this? Surveillance measures. What surveillance measures were put in place to check this? Now we are being told that we are dealing with different groups. We don't know who their sponsors are. We don't know who the masterminds are. We don't know who is training them. We don't know who is sponsoring them. And look at the sophistication they displayed. Never in the history of this country have we seen such display of sophistication and brazenness that they could even overpower the reinforcement mission of the divisional police commander, shoot him. I'm told that he and his other officers sustained injuries. They are hospitalized as we speak and all that. There are questions that need to be answered. And we need to investigate these issues.
You're correct about
and
that.
Not take what government and our security agencies
there clearly are questions to be asked. And if you take the Homeland Study Group Foundation, which has gained a lot of notoriety in this regard, in March 2017, 3 members of that group were arrested. Charles Komi Kojuji, who is 78 and founder of the group, 57-year-old Martin Asiama Agbenu, and Divine Odonko, 65 years. They were charged with treason, but in July, the charges were dropped. They were set free and they were asked to go and be of good behavior, we are told. Then in May 2019, 9 members got arrested, again charged with treason. Then in July 2019, the state once again dropped the charges and the 9 were discharged. In November 2019, police on a manhunt for Papavi as a new group emerges, and I'm sure we have followed that, and we have heard about them even attending to being given audiences by chiefs in other parts of the country. Still in November, the Homeland Group emerges and declare independence few meters from the police regional school. They declared independence. Of course, you have seen their flags and other things, billboards that they mount. Then in February of this year, 21 members were arrested while training in the forests at Ketu. 21 of them were arrested whilst they were in training. I'm sure you have seen how they look very mobilized, well organized in that training exercise. So that was in February, they got arrested. Now in March, the state drops the case against the 21. In March, against 20, not 21. Okay. Right, the organizer was kept. Okay. Then we have seen them, mount signposts in parts of the country. So, Obi,
before you go,
yes, Obi,
have we seen any successful prosecution of any of these persons who have been arrested?
I've given you the timeline and how they get arrested and the charges get dropped. So with this at the back of our minds, how did we get here?
Well, thank you, Samson. Good morning to you, viewers and listeners, and to my younger brother. Well, of course, we have to admit that this is a serious security breach. Some persons have been emboldened to the extent of declaring their own state, having their flag, their constitution, whatever. And at the same time, we have to say that there's no rules. It's a bit unfortunate that you have our political friends or our opponents trying to say that this government trying to create this kind of situation so that they will engender instability in their stronghold. These things are not helpful. They are not helpful at all. Indeed, those who are behind all these things, this is what they are looking for. Where, as much as possible, the strong political parties will be fighting each other, blaming each other, and then let them have their own way. This is not helpful at all. If I read some statements from political leaders, including MPs, etc., in one breath, they say that we should beef up security. Another breath, oh, his government itself is instigating all this. It's not helpful at all. The reality is that this group exists, and this group has international connections.
International connections?
Yes, I'm surprised you may not even know. This group has international connections. National security is aware of all these things. Indeed, if you go to the report of so-called Unrepresented Nations and People's Organization, 2017, they are adopting this group, saying that they are being marginalized, they are under siege by government since 2017, so they have to represent them as people without nation, and they have a right to be on their own because the plebiscite was not properly done.
Which group is this you say is adopting them?
It's Unrepresented Nations and People's Organization. There's a report on it in 2017. If you Google Unrepresented Nations and People's Organization and link it to the Homeland Security Group Foundation, you'll find a report there. And to the extent that they even say that it's the MPP which is attacking them, that's why they want to have their own state, whatever. That is the beginning of it. And probably you are talking about, as early as February 2017, he held a press conference. That's a press conference that he chaired, that they wanted independence, there's time for radicals to take over. Meanwhile, if you go to the report, this group was formed in 1994. It was formed in 1994 as a so-called study group, Homeland Study Group. Sometimes they go underground. When it sues them, they come up and say that now we are declaring independence. And so they decided that by May 9, 2017, they should declare independence. And since then, they have done their worst, but for the fact that the security situation or the security agencies have been on top of the job, there would have been much more serious situations than this. As you yourself narrated, there have been several instances where they've been arrested. Some, they are charged, some are granted bail, some are freed for want of prosecution, all those things. As far back as February 2017, when they started, by March, they had been arrested. The three of them, key people that you mentioned, Odonko and Co., and Papavi himself, they were charged with abetment of unlawful training, unlawful assembly, offensive conduct, conducive to a breach of peace, etc., etc. At the end of the day, they were granted bail. Papavi was freed. Others are being tried. We also got to know that they even had a secret camp for training. And when the national security zoomed in on them, it happened that they were using the name of Ghana Army to recruit people. That, oh, Ghana Army is recruiting people to train them, so come on board. That's how come when they invaded the forest and arrested the 21. Upon interrogation, the 20 were found not to do anything about this thing, except that their leaders had organized them and said that this is in the name of Ghana. You understand? So obviously, we have a situation on our hands which we should deal with. In one breath, you are saying that there should be no knee-jerk reaction. In another breath, this is a ruse. In one, we should be consistent in what we do and say, and have a concerted effort to address this situation. If we jump into the political arena, we have to blame you, we are not solving any problem. After 94, we were not in charge of Ghana. And since 94, if they have been around, why would you then say that it's a Kufuor's group who are trying to set up people to just divert attention or creating security?
But the question is, from the narration you have given, the narrative you have given, and the fact that they have been known all this while.
National security is very much aware of them.
Okay, very much aware of them.
Yes.
Can there be an excuse for what happened yesterday?
Well, there's always security situation which may have been overlooked. As you yourself said, the critical information they had was the attack on the market, burning down the market, and they addressed it. These people then at 2 a.m. decided to then just vandalize anything that they would come across, and they ended up setting up a roadblock. It's been quelled. They've been arrested. They will deal with them. That's how I wanted to see it. If we create an impression. That's why I'm saying that we should be consistent in what we're doing. If at one point you say that government is trying to prop them so that they will create instability, another breath, government shouldn't be hard on them.
Right.
Another breath. In any way, in any case, this is a rule of law. We are in a democracy.
Right.
You don't just say that I've identified these people there, I'm going to kill all of them to solve the problem.
So let me go to Professor Kwesi Ening.
Don't worry, I haven't finished at all.
Unless I'm like done with you, the politicians. I'm going to Kwesi Ening for the way forward. The way forward. So since you said you haven't finished, I'll give you a minute, conclude, and then I get to Sami Jemfi also. So
what I'm saying is that those who have been arrested will be put before court.
Right.
If there's a case against them, they'll be tried. Even if it's treason, they'll face the full rigors of the law.
Yeah.
The consequences will be very bitter for them. But at the same time, we should be careful not to say that government is weak, so show your might. The next day, you tell us that the whole village has been wiped out, and it's just to show that you are against your opponents. We should be very careful because this is a very delicate matter.
All right. Okay.
Even though these people are preaching secession, it's a very delicate matter.
All right.
Because for all intents and purposes, there are not many,
right.
even though they have international links and everything. And you should be careful in not targeting innocent people simply because you say that this is what the people want.
Yes.
Yes. From Kulungu, they are claiming from Kulungu all the way down.
I see. Interesting. Yes.
Oh, I'll show you the map and everything.
Sometimes Honorable Obiamwa makes a point that I think is very revealing and instructive. He says that what happened clearly shows that some people have been emboldened to engage in what they did. So
you are taking my words to be able to look for something.
What accounts for that? How were they emboldened? You see, when people engage in seditious and treasonable acts,
they are arrested, left
off the hook, left off the hook. You see, when you fail to punish wrongdoing, you embolden wrongdoers. And so clearly, what you have said shows clearly that you are to be blamed for this, the escalation of the problem.
Okay.
You said that this thing started way back in 1994 and all that. We have never seen this group display openly this level of, thuggery, militancy and all that. And finally, you see, this is what some people don't want us to see.
Were you supposed to come in this
If this was happening in the Ashanti region,
yes,
Honorable Obiamwa, you know that by now these miscreants would have been fished out and they would have been dealt with drastically.
Why do you seek to achieve by
Because you think that the Volta region is a stronghold of the NDC. And therefore, a state of insecurity and instability inures your electoral advantage. That is why you are looking on concerned.
At the same time,
yes.
At the same time, you say that some people understand.
That is what
because they are your opponents.
No.
You shouldn't even be going there. Please,
the people of Volta region
don't do politics this way.
Support what is happening.
Don't do politics this way. It doesn't help our politics at all.
And
don't do politics this way. We shouldn't allow this.
Why have you been leaving them?
We shouldn't allow this. That if it were Ashanti region, you would have done it this way because it's Volta region. Don't do politics that way.
So
it's not helpful.
Hold on.
It is so glaring.
Even though, as we have been informed, they get arrested and get left off. If you listen to Obi's submission clearly, it's not all the time that all of them are left off. Some of them are left because, as he says, due process must be undergone. And you don't just pick people and of course, you also want successful prosecution.
Yes.
So as we know, and I'm going to Professor Kwesi Ening now, there are 45. Sorry, there are 45.
Surety for him.
Gentlemen, there are 45 of these guys belonging to this group or the group with this kind of agenda, who are, as we speak, facing trial in Tamale, in Wa, in Ho, and in Accra. In all, 45 of them.
Exactly.
Now, Professor Ening, the way forward, when you say you have expectations of negotiations, I believe those who deal with some of these things in the international level will agree with you that when you have like a community and when you have people in large numbers, you don't just go the way of treating them with criminal law But since there are sentiments and there's a history behind the things they do, you need to at least give them a hearing and find a resolution. How exactly do you mean when you say you have an expectation of some negotiations?
Well, after the emotions die down, the sense that there has been a concerted failure, the initial response or emotional response would be to say, look, the state has been humiliated, let's go in and wipe them out. But why pull out and fight? And dependent on the type of response that we initiate, it can either escalate or de-escalate the problem. Looking at where we are located and the challenges that we face, security-wise, coming round to talk, and I'm not expecting a government minister or deputy minister to lead that process. The initial process will be led or will be some backdoor process, okay, where we begin to talk, identify the critical issues, and how we negotiate around them. If the narratives that we are hearing from the secessionist groups, that is, if we do a discourse analysis of what their issues are, then it allows the state to come round by using its negotiators or mediators, whichever word we want to use, to begin to move towards each other. A brutal military response alone will not help. Finally, I think the security forces will be very happy where our political leaders to stop the partisanship with respect to issues that we can classify as threatening our existence, so that the message is clear, the message is consistent, the message is supportive, so that as a nation, there is consistency and agreement that this is how we deal with issues that threaten our survival and our life. Because you see, the people we are dealing with are
So, Professor Ening, let me understand. Yes. As we speak, and as I have just confirmed for the attention of all of you and everybody else, there are 45 of these members on trial, facing trial in Tamale, in Wa, in Ho, and in Accra already.
31 were arrested yesterday.
And 31 was arrested yesterday. Now, is the suggestion that you go into negotiations with them and allow expressions of emotions and try to assuage all their fears and everything else, and then they go back to, continue their life? Or after that, those who have actually committed criminal harm and various acts of, crime will be prosecuted?
No, in the negotiation process,
some of them have absconded.
There is give and take.
So not all the 45 people are.
You will weigh.
He's not part of the 45.
What you would seek to achieve were you to use just the law to punish people.
Some will say that will be entertaining and rather emboldening them for future, resurgence.
Yeah. No, that's not true. The history of secessionism and the way that these issues have been resolved does not speak to that. In Liberia, in Sierra Leone, in La Côte d'Ivoire, in Mali, and now increasingly in Burkina Faso, talking to those who feel excluded and have lifted arms against the state does not show weakness on the part of the state. Far from it.
The politicians in the studio agree, the two of them added them in one mind, that they haven't gotten to the stage to be referred to in the same level as the Liberian situation and the others that you are talking about.
Oh yes, but we shouldn't wait for it to get to that stage.
Yes, they are saying that's the reason they should not be treated with kid gloves, well, and that they should be crushed.
I will tell you, and I will have this conversation in 2 or 3 years' time, and we'll go back to the drawing board and start from where we are starting from. You and I have had these conversations about small arms and the weakness in the law.
Right.
About exclusionary politics leading to people feeling left out. We've spoken about the Fulani case, about victimhood, exclusion, and livelihood. No, we need to be bold and to say,
all right,
let's take the interventionary steps that will stop a crisis from escalating.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Kwesi Ening, for your usual insights on these very technical and sophisticated matters. But because of the feeling that I have that they are giving vent to in the studio, I'd like them to give me like 30 seconds each on your last point, because they seem to completely disagree with you as in the politicians.
With all due respect, I don't agree with
you don't?
I don't. That
they should just be treated as criminals?
No, that they feel excluded and that we should sit down with them, and then otherwise in 3 years' time we'll be talking about the consequences. What are their grievances? Their main thing is that we still want to join Togo. The plebiscite was not done well, even though the figures really show what happened. And then they bring in other things. If you come to our area, we are neglected. If you come to our area, we don't have facilities. So the whole country, where people don't have facilities, even if concentrating all their actions, they were not even part of the plebiscite. If you look at the figures and the towns, the communities involved, they were not part of it. But now they are using that as a basis, and they talk about exclusion, talk about lack of amenities. This is like a cool leader just trying to rattle something just to have basis and grounds for his actions. So we should be very careful. Otherwise, from Kulungungu to Keta, you have people with grievances. You have people who talk about, we don't have water, we don't have toilet, we don't have this, so we are no more part of Ghana. We should rise. If you don't listen to us, then we will take arms. We can't run a country this way. And the Constitution says that this is a unitary state. Anybody who tries to create federalism is against the Constitution.
Okay, and let's hear Samitu. But before you do that, a colleague of yours, a lawyer, says that this is Frederick sending the message from Lakeside Estate. He says, I think as a state, we have failed to appreciate the emotional aspect of conflicts. If a crime is committed and the culprit must be dealt with in accordance with law, but let us not be oblivious of their consistent complaints. I think the state should give a listening ear to them and consider a possible negotiation. This is what you guys are against.
There are certain things that are subject to mediation and negotiation, in my opinion. But there are other things that cannot and should not be subject matters of mediation and negotiation. One of such things is treason or sedition. When the territorial integrity of a country is threatened by rebels, you don't negotiate with them. You stamp it out. This, let's sit down with them and talk to them and all that is what has brought us to where we are
today. You use the word rebels.
Yes, that's who they are.
In the clear sense of that, we have known rebels that have sat at the negotiation table.
That is when sovereign countries have allowed, such situation to degenerate. Okay? And then there is need for some peace resolutions. But at this level, the situation can be contained. They can be stamped out if we are committed. Okay? And I agree with Honorable Obiamwa when he says that Ghana is a unitary state and we must not tolerate the activities of this group.
Article 4 of the Constitution, we are a unitary state. Exactly. That's who we are.
And I think that
it is only the president and acting through a commission that can create further regions.
And I think that he should give this advice, this counsel to Dr. Lecha, the regional minister, and his boss, President Akufo-Addo. If they adopt this same posture, if they adopt this same stance, and put that into action,
I work for him.
We will succeed in stamping out the activities of these.
Thank you. Okay, so James Kobna Bonfe, Kabila, CPP, says that this matter is a clear national security and intelligence challenge, not failure. But security is only one aspect of national socio-political economic life. In Ghana, the grounds and grievances on which they argue are prevalent and pervasive in every part of the country. So everyone should get up and charge to succeed. We need to be very sober and dispassionate in discussing this matter. Granted, every lawbreaker would give cogent and perhaps convincing grounds for their actions. In security commentary, we can't degenerate or exacerbate the situation with reckless or careless expressions. I'll return to read some more of the messages that you are sending in. This is NewsFile. It's your most authoritative news analysis show. Then when we return, we will be asking the question, is the NDC right? And those that support it, that the EC has committed a failure of monumental proportions in the voter exhibition exercise. We'll be right back.